Hi there. I'm here today with Krishna Gauci. Krishna is a founding member of the Trillium Awakening Teachers Circle and the Institute of Awakened Mutuality. He is also a senior Trillium Awakening teacher. Krishna is the developer of the Tapestry of Being paradigm and has been a teacher since 2001. He loves bridging various traditional influences to serve 21st century people and orienting to the mystery of being. He became a devotee of the Spiritual Master HWL Poonja, Papaji, since meeting him in 1993. He also has a background in Buddhist practice. He currently offers his own work with students worldwide. So welcome, Krishna, and
thank you, Cielle. Hi.
Hello. I invited you here today to talk about consciousness in any way that you want to.
Okay, good. I'd love to talk about consciousness. So we'll start off with a meditation that is actually using discriminating awareness in service to direct pointing to consciousness. So I'll start off, let's see, with something very, very basic, which is to say that we're going to be using discriminating awareness in service to discriminating between the subject and objects. So if I show you these keys, I know for some spiritual folks, they would say that they are one with these keys, or that these keys are them. But for the sake of this exercise, we are discriminating between the subject, which is you, aware of the object, which is the keys. So there's a way in which you are one with the keys, but there's also a way in which you aren't. There's a way in which the keys are an object to you, and you aren't the keys. You're the one that's aware of the keys. I mean, the keys can come and go, and here you are. So I just wanted to start off with that little, be very clear. So whenever you're ready, if you just close your eyes, notice. Okay. Good. Just notice the movement of your breath, the sensations of your breathing. Nothing to do, nothing to change. Just aware of the sensations of your breathing. You have a sense of the breathing?
Yes.
Good. You're aware of the breathing, are you not?
Yes.
So in that sense, you aren't your breathing. You're aware of it. The sensation of the breathing is an object. You're the subject. Now see if you can allow your attention to include the sensations of your body from the tips of your toes, the top of your head. All of those sensations. Just allow yourself to be aware of all of them. Your fingertips. Sensation of clothing on your body. The pressure of how you're sitting. All of the sensations of the body itself. Take all of those sensations together. You're aware of all of that sensation of the body, are you not?
Yes.
So in that sense, the sensations of the body are an object to you. You're aware of them. You're the subject, they're the object. So in that sense, you aren't the sensations of the body. Now, as we're doing this, you might feel some presence. Not everybody will feel this, but you may feel some presence or transmission or feeling sense in the body, around the body, whatever sense of presence that you're feeling. Your own presence, our presence, my presence, whatever presence you feel, just include that with the sensations of the body, so that you're aware of the presence of the body and also the presence itself. And perhaps you're feeling the presence of the room you're in as well. If you have a sense of the room you're in, a felt sense of the room you're in, include that as well. Whatever it is that you have a felt sense of, whatever feeling sense you have, sensations, even if it's outside the room, let's just allow ourselves to include that as well, all the sensations as one. What would be known as the kinesthetic field, or the field of feeling sensation. All the feeling sense. You're aware of this, are you not?
Yes.
Very good. So in that sense, the feeling sensation field is an object to you. You're aware of it. So in that sense, you're not it. You're the subject. It's the object that you're aware of. Now, as we're sitting here, there is the sound of my voice. You may hear some other sounds in the room. Maybe there's sounds outside of the room as well. You might even hear like the sounds of the inner ear, or very high-pitched frequencies, you know, the internal sounds. So just become aware of all the sound together. The entire auditory field. You have a sense of that.
Mm-hmm.
You're aware of this field of sound, this auditory field, are you not?
Yes.
Very good. So that auditory field, this auditory field, this field of sound is an object to you. You're aware of it. And in that sense, you aren't the auditory field. It's an object to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have our eyes closed, but we still might be able to see some light on the other side of our eyelids. So whatever it is that you're seeing, the entire visual field, you're aware of that, are you not?
Yes.
Very good. So in that sense, it's an object to you. You're aware of the visual field, and in that sense, you aren't the visual field. It's the object, you're the subject, aware of the visual field. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you smell something. Might be whatever smells there are in your room. Just include those as well. The olfactory field. And if there's any taste in your mouth as well, the gustatory field. You're aware of these fields, are you not?
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, they aren't you. They're objects to you. You're the subject, aware of the objects.
Mm-hmm.
You're aware of those fields. So you aren't the visual field, the audio field, the feeling sensation or kinesthetic field. You aren't the fields of taste, and smell. Also, as we've been here, you might have been having some thoughts. So most of us are having thoughts even now. We can have visual thoughts, like seeing the image of a faucet dripping. That would be a visual thought. Or hearing the dripping of that faucet would be an auditory thought. And then there's discursive thoughts, like talking, self-talk, like description of what's going on. We're talking to ourselves. You're aware of all these thoughts, are you not?
Yes.
So in that sense, these thoughts are objects to you. You're the subject, aware of the objects. You're aware of them. So in that sense, you aren't thoughts or mind or the field of thoughts. You are aware of the field of thoughts. You're aware of thoughts arising and passing. Do you have a sense of that?
Yes.
Very good. Even there's a particular kind of thought, or maybe a feeling sensation for some people. Whatever it is for you, you may have a feeling sense of I or me, like a feeling sense of yourself. Do you have a sense of that?
Mm-hmm.
You're aware of that feeling sense, are you not?
Yes.
So in that sense, that feeling sense of me or I is an object to you. You're aware of it. And in that sense, it's not you, it's an object to you, even the feeling sense of me or I. And maybe there's emotions. There can be emotions now like curiosity or boredom or frustration or calm or any kind of emotions that may be arising right now or happening right now. Could be very neutral as well. Whatever feelings you're aware of or emotions you're aware of. Do you have a sense of emotions right now?
Yes.
Very good. So those, you're aware of those emotions, are you not?
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, your emotions or the emotions are not you. You aren't your emotions, you're aware of them. And they're an object to you. So in that sense, they aren't you. You're the subject, aware of emotions as well. And the whole time we've been kind of moving focus or attention from one place to another, like the tips of your toes to the top of your head, to the sensation of your breathing, to sounds. You're aware of this attention, are you not?
Mm-hmm.
So even though it's very subtle, it's an object to you. You're aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, you aren't attention. You're aware of attention. You're the subject, and attention is an object. And also, as we've been doing this, I've been just asking, you're aware of this, are you not? And you've been doing this kind of little checking. Mm-hmm. This is the subject, this is the object. Mm-hmm. With each thing, there's been a kind of a checker or a noticer or a discriminator. Noticing, It's kind of like a little binary form of perception or mind even. Just looking, noticing, yep, noticing a distinction. You're aware of this distinguishing or discrimination, are you not?
Yes.
So even that discrimination, that many times, even without looking at it, we might think is I'm discriminating. But that discrimination, you're aware of it. So even that discriminating awareness or discriminating mind is an object to you. You're aware of it. You see it happening.
Mm-hmm.
You're the subject. It's a very subtle object. So now, see if you can get a sense of what is aware of this discrimination. What is the subject? Do you have a sense of the subject?
I have a sense of it.
All right. And can you give a word to that sense, just for the sake, a label?
Well, as soon as I give a label to it, it'll become an object.
Ah, well, you know that. Well, let's say if now this can be, now this is good to talk about because everybody has a little slightly different experience here. Some people would say, well, yes, I have a sense of the subject and it feels like space. And then say, okay, you're aware of that space, are you not? Yes, I'm aware of that space. So in that sense, this space is an object to you.
Mm-hmm.
You're aware of it. So therefore, the space is not the subject. So I said, do you have a sense of what's aware of the space? And then someone might say, yes, it's presence. I say, okay. You're aware of that presence, are you not? Yes. So in that sense, the presence is an object to you. You're aware of it. You're the subject. It's the object. So therefore, that sense of presence isn't the subject. Can you get a sense of what's aware of that? And then sometimes someone will say something like emptiness or this or that. And each time it can be a very subtle, very expansive thing, very quiet, very whatever. But it's sure enough a thing. It's sensed. So this is a bit like discrimination, constantly noticing and then kind of like eternal regress. People talk about endless regress. So at this point, it either becomes obvious or maybe just a little bit of a push to see that in actuality, we don't have a sense of the subject. If soon as we have a sense, it's no longer the subject. So the subject, which is you, because the whole time I've been saying you are aware of this, you are aware of this. You are actually not to be sensed. You are not actually experienced, or the subject is not actually experienced. And this is where the word consciousness is often used, this consciousness word. Because there's awareness of all of these things, are there not? There's awareness of all of these, everything we went through. Awareness of sensations, of the visual field, of the auditory field, of discrimination, of attention. There's awareness of all of those. But the awareness itself, the subject itself, cannot be found. So the nature of the subject is awareness or consciousness. That's the nature of the subject, is consciousness. But it's actually not findable. And even to say it, that consciousness is an it, is not quite correct. There's not a findable. Consciousness is not, by nature, consciousness is not findable. By nature, it is you. That we know. You're aware of this, are you not? You're aware of this, yes. But you are not findable. You are not a thing. You are not an experience. So this is where all the language about consciousness being realized or recognized comes in. It's not actually experienced. Every bit of language that we use that describes things as describes consciousness in a way that sounds like an experience, is either incorrect, or it's a metaphor, or it's just trying to put into language something that can't be put into language. So whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes, and we can maybe continue this a little bit more about this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome. Is there anything you like? Well, I could say a couple of more words about it, and then maybe I'll ask you to ask me some questions.
Okay, why don't you say a few more words?
Okay. So this is the tricky part, eh? The looking directly to find the subject does not actually mean the finding of the subject as an object. Looking for anything always assumes an object, and that's the thing about looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for something, an object. And in this case, attention is actually going to its source, looking for its source. It's looking for where it proceeds from, where it comes from. And that can't be found. So you can't be found as consciousness itself. This is why it's called itself. Because you can be conscious of something, but consciousness itself, the subject itself, is not findable. It's beable. It always is beable. You're always being it. So I like to talk about this a little as if you're wearing a miner's hat.
Mm-hmm.
You have a miner's hat with a light on it, and you're looking around at everything, and you can see everything because of that. And in the darkness of the mind, you can see everything with the miner's hat on. And somebody says to you, you're wearing a miner's hat, you have a miner's hat, and you look for it. The light, you cannot find it. Of course you can't, because it's on you. In this case, you are the light. Mm-hmm. Another thing about the word consciousness is, ness, N-E-S-S, that's like a quality or an adjective. Like yellowness is the quality of an object that is yellow. Mm-hmm. Redness is the quality of an object that's red. Wetness is a quality of an object that's wet. It's the quality of something. And this word consciousness is used in a strange way. It's not used, people are being told, you are consciousness. It's like saying you are yellowness. It's not, there's not an object that the consciousness is adhering to. We don't find an object that is conscious. It's not a being that is conscious. It's consciousness. Mm-hmm. So this is why in Buddhism, a lot of times the language has to do with emptiness and no self, because it doesn't have any inherent existence, but its nature is naturally luminous. It's illuminating naturally. But there isn't any thing that's doing that. Mm-hmm. In Hinduism, the emphasis is on the fact that it's you that is the luminosity. So it's called self for that reason, because it's your intrinsic nature. It's the whole time it's been, you're aware of this, you're aware of this. So it's like, oh, that's the nature of the self, pure consciousness, simply consciousness, merely consciousness. So this is a kind of direct pointing out what we did today. Mm-hmm. It's directly pointing to it. There's other things, other ways that are not direct. This is one direct way of pointing. A lot of people use different ways to get you to look. That's basically the Zen way. There's another way also, which is indirect. The thing about the direct way, the direct pointing to space, is that we go beyond concepts of the mind to directly look and realize consciousness. It's kind of like not this, not that. We're going beyond that way. In this way, attention ends up resting in its source, which is naturally the position of consciousness itself. Mm-hmm. So the attention that's first looking at this, looking at that, then turns around. Now look for the subject. And then it just naturally, attention does that kind of a thing. It sort of becomes its object. So when attention goes to look for the subject, it doesn't find anything. It's just space. It's a bit like taking a flashlight and putting it into the night sky. As long as the flashlight's on the ground, you can see things. Put it in the night sky, it's just lost. It's not that the flashlight isn't illuminating the space just absorbs it. Mm-hmm. So attention becomes absorbed in the space itself, in consciousness itself. It becomes beyond words. That's direct looking. But another way, which is indirect, is to go beyond concepts through entering feeling. Mm-hmm. To enter the sense of being, the felt sense of being. And this is enhanced through transmission of energy or presence. And then that's a little bit indirect because you're actually putting your attention on an object of awareness, mm-hmm. which is energy or presence. And by attention being drawn into the felt sense of transmission, of presence, beyond thinking, beyond concepts, kind of transcending the mind, going beyond thinking, beyond concepts, into a state of absorption, the attention will often find itself resting in the witness position of consciousness by itself. Mm-hmm. And often people will find themselves resting in the conscious position, with their attention resting as consciousness itself as a result of feeling into an expanded sense of energy or of transmission or presence. And that's a bit more indirect. Mm-hmm. It's important for folks when they're in this indirect thing, every once in a while, to notice what's happening. To notice directly from there, in which this is all arising in. What's aware of all of this? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, one associates the feeling of energy or presence with consciousness, rather than recognizing that that feeling brings you to the position naturally of consciousness. Mm-hmm. This is why it's indirect. So that's about all I have to say for now. Did you, I'm open to any questions or any comments or any conversation you want to have, Cielle?
Yeah, I don't think I really have any questions for you, but just the comment I have. Well, first of all, thank you for that delineation from a direct experience and an indirect experience. I think that was really, really helpful. And I do agree that one of the things about an indirect experience is that we can then equate energy that led us to the doorstep of consciousness. We can equate that energy to be energetic field to be consciousness. And so I think maybe somehow the two together help one to not put energy and consciousness into the same understanding, because that more direct experience that was more discriminating disallowed that conflation of the two.
Yeah, that's the thing to do in one. Often even like teachers from other traditions, like I spent a lot of time with Papaji. Mm-hmm. There was not even any language about transmission most of the time. Sometimes people would just comment on it, like, "Wow, I can feel your energy. I can feel your transmission." But in fact, even when it wasn't spoken, when you were in his presence, you felt a tremendous amount of transmission. Right. Which directly short circuits the conceptual mind because you're feeling. And then in that moment, he would do direct pointing. Mm-hmm. He would then directly point you to what's aware of it. And in those moments, even if you said, which many times I heard people say, your presence, your grace, he would say, whose presence, whose grace? Grace is grace. What is aware of that grace? What is aware of that presence? So pointing people back to that.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, everything becomes contingent on energy. So if you're not feeling energy or transmission, then you don't have a sense of consciousness. Whereas actually, consciousness itself is present there, whether there's a contracted feeling or an expanded feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, of course, it's more yummy when things are expanded, when we're feeling expanded. Those states are wonderful. But consciousness itself is present. And it's a little tricky, the language, because it's fine for the sake of talking to say that you have a direct experience of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually really like you have there's a direct pointing to consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a recognition of consciousness, but there's actually no experience of consciousness. It's a recognition or a realization of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the case with indirect, it is an experience of energy. There's actually an object there and you're experiencing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's the trick is to not be so enthralled with the feeling of the energy as to never actually clearly recognize, oh, wait a minute. Part of what's happening is I'm resting in a place where I'm watching everything, even thoughts, even the mind, even the sense of myself. I'm aware of all of those in the midst of this great big field of energy that I'm feeling. And so to have that, and you have both of those, that's certainly is always, they go together. It's like Shiva, Shakti, they're married.
Mm-hmm.
But to be clear about the difference between Shiva and Shakti is very important.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm glad that you included both of those in this experiential exercise. And I think if I also then spoke to my own experience during the direct inquiry, it did feel, although you didn't specifically say this, it did feel like a peeling away of experience, and it was such a systematic, peeling away, like, oh, that is an object of your experience. And so felt like there was a peeling away. And again, I have to speak metaphorically, but it felt like what I was left with was just resting in myself. And again, that is a subject-object relationship languaging that I've just said right now. And so it's hard for me to give words, but it did feel like a complete, like, peeling away of all objective experience. And what is just left is just the sense of I, except for, again, see, that creates an object-subject relationship, but it was beyond that.
Yes.
And so that's why I would use the word. I love it when you use words like realization or recognition. I was going to use the word resting as, but it, again, the language is always going to have its limits, but it was like a deep resting of.
Yeah. And it's good to see what is resting as consciousness is actually attention.
Yes.
Resting as consciousness.
Yeah.
Because consciousness is already there.
Mm-hmm.
The subject is there through the whole thing. It's just that attention is usually on some object.
Right.
Right? And it flitters from one object to the other.
Mm-hmm.
So the kind of deep rest that's possible when attention, you could say, all kinds of ways that are all kind of not quite right, but attention rests in its source. Attention, because we always say, my attention is on that, but we don't know who the my is.
Right, yeah.
Well, I'm putting my, who's that I? So then of course there's a sense that, oh, I know who I am. I am the person described in thoughts. Well, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the I that's aware of thoughts. Oh, well, I am that feeling sense of me. Oh, well, but we're talking about what's aware of that feeling sense of me. Now, this is when we sometimes talk about egoic consciousness or consciousness of the jiva or the soul. But what we're talking about is the consciousness prior to that, or aware of all of that. And that is impersonal in the sense that it's not findable as a person or anybody in particular or anything in particular. Yeah. So Ramana called that the I, letter I, of I. Like the I of the I.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so that's another way of, and it is a kind of peeling away. It's basically discrimination or discriminating awareness in service to distinguishing or discriminating the subject from all the rest of the objects. What is the nature of our subjectivity? Of what I like to call radical subjectivity. Because usually when we talk about subjectivity, we're talking about the personal I and in relationship to its thoughts. And this is my personal subjectivity, my subjective experience. That's fine, that's great. But radical is like even at the root of that. And that's what radical means. It's like at the root of, even more at the root of that, what's aware of even that. And so we have a radical subjectivity that we are. That when attention is resting there, it's absolute peace, unmoving, unchanging. It's always unmoving and unchanging, but the experience is of peace and rest when attention is resting in that position.
Yeah, I also really liked that analogy of the flashlight and how, when that light is being reflected off of something, we see the reflection of it in the things that it's reflecting off of. But if you then point it up, that same flashlight up to space where there's nothing for it to reflect off of, we don't see it at all. And I love that analogy that when consciousness is not, or when attention is not pointed at anything to reflect back to it, it just is consciousness.
Yeah, this is the
without form. Yeah,
absolutely. And that feels when there's no form, and attention is directed in the place where there is no form. It's directed in a place where there's no limit, and the feeling of it is then ecstatic. Because then attention is actually merging with nothing, therefore everything. I mean, this happens quite naturally when we have like an enclosed space, a lot of things, even externally, it can feel not so great. And then you walk out to some place in big sky, and you guys are in Iowa, so
yeah, right.
But I mean, place where there's just fields and big sky, attention just goes, whoa, and then it feels all right, or you go to the mountains, you look out, whoa, or you go to the ocean and you look out and it's like, what's happening there is that the panorama is so vast that attention is not on one particular thing, it's on pretty much everything. It's a panoramic vision. And we can actually kind of apply this practically by letting ourselves go into a place of panoramic vision, allowing awareness to just kind of attention to expand, to be more inclusive anytime, or to look for consciousness itself or the subject itself.
Right.
But yeah, there's a kind of a beautiful side effect when there's no limits on attention.
Well, thank you. Is there anything more that you want to say in closing? Does that feel complete to you?
Feels very complete. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share this with you and anybody who's watching. And yeah.
I think it will serve people well.
Excellent.
Thank you.